My name is Omar Farid Khan. I'm 29 years old, a propulsion systems engineer at SpaceX, and on September 8, 2022, I died. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean, literally died in an engine bay explosion at Starbase, Texas. The day started like any other. Woke up at 4:45 a.m., performed wudu, recited a few ayahs from the Quran, and then drove to the testing facility, the place I truly believed was building the future for all mankind. I'd been at SpaceX for 6 years. Straight out of UT Austin. I was the first in my family to make it into an American aerospace company, and I was proud of that. My wife, Layla, and I had just bought a house in Brownsville. We were expecting our first child. I thought I was living the American dream and doing something good for the world, for the Ummah, for humanity, but I had no idea that what was happening behind the glass walls and data screens was so much more terrifying. We were running a pressure test on a new Raptor engine fuel line. Everything was by the book. And then boom, a single moment, a flash of white light. I felt nothing but heat and a pressure that made it impossible to breathe. I thought of Layla, of the way she whispered a prayer for me every morning. I thought of the name we had chosen for our son just the night before, Yusuf, and then darkness, but not the kind of darkness you think. That darkness wasn't the end. It was the gateway to something my entire life, as a science-loving Muslim, had never prepared me to face. I wasn't floating into a void. I was taken somewhere, and I met someone I thought was never meant for me. I have to tell you this, not because I'm special, but because this is a warning. Something very big is coming, and you need to know. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but everything was more vivid than any dream I'd ever had, as if my senses were dialed up to infinity. There was no gravity, no pain, only a light that didn't blind me, but wrapped around me like a warm blanket on a cold night. I found myself floating through a tunnel with no walls, no boundaries, just a gentle current pulling me toward that living light. I wasn't afraid. Strangely, I felt loved, in a way no prayer had ever been able to describe. And then I saw him. There was no introduction, no lightning, no throne, just a man, standing in the middle of the light. He wore a simple robe. His face was radiant, but his eyes, those eyes, they're what broke me. He looked nothing like the pictures in religious books or Western movies. But I knew, with a certainty that shook my soul, I knew it was Jesus Isa al-Masih. I didn't know what to do. As a Muslim, I was taught that Jesus was a great prophet, miraculously born, who would return at the end of days. But this wasn't textbook knowledge. This was a direct encounter with the truth. He smiled, a smile with no judgment, only welcome, as if he always knew I would arrive. He spoke my name, Omar. My knees gave out. I fell. I started to weep, not from fear, but from the overwhelming feeling of being known, truly known, by the one who exists beyond all space, time, and religion. I whispered, the words barely forming. I'm a Muslim. He didn't react the way I feared he would. No anger, no demand for me to renounce anything, just a nod, and a sentence that made my entire being go still. I know. And I chose to meet you anyway. I couldn't speak anymore. I just stared at him, trembling. He stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder, and an indescribable warmth flooded my non-physical body. You have worked so hard to help humanity get to Mars, he said. But you don't know the real reason they want to go there. I didn't understand. I thought I was doing the right thing, contributing to a dream of evolution, of the future, of survival. They are not looking for new life, Jesus said, his voice still gentle. They are looking for an escape. I was confused, nearly frantic. An escape? From what, Lord? He turned, raising his hand, and a different scene appeared, as if the space around us was torn open. It was a massive room, dark, cold, and opulent. A black stone table sat in the middle, and around that table were powerful faces I had only ever seen on TV. I was stunned. This is This is a part of the truth, Jesus said, and you need to see it to understand why I brought you here. Before I could ask more, he continued, with no accusation, no criticism. Your religion could not save you. Your title did not bring you closer to me. Only love and truth can do that. And the truth, I will now show you. I swallowed hard. I felt I was about to face something I could never turn back from. But I nodded, and Jesus smiled, a sad but hopeful smile. I did not call you because you are a Muslim, or not. I called you because you still know how to listen, in a world that has become too loud to hear my voice. As Jesus raised his hand, the light around me dimmed, and I found myself standing in a strange, vast boardroom. It had no windows. The walls were made of a black material that reflected light in a sickening way. The air was heavy, as if gravity itself was different here. In the center of the room was a massive table of black stone, and around it sat familiar figures. World leaders, tech billionaires, people I had admired for their vision of space, but not all of them were human. I saw several tall beings, with solid black eyes and skin that shimmered like obsidian glass. They radiated a presence that sent a chill down my spine. I can't explain it, I just knew they were not of this earth, and the powerful humans at the table. None of them seemed surprised by their presence. Jesus whispered beside me, they call this place the Council, and their plan has been in motion for decades. I saw a man I knew well, a giant in the aerospace industry, speaking, the awakening is happening faster than we projected. More people are starting to pray, to seek truth. We have to get off planet before the final harvest. The final harvest? One of the non-human entities leaned forward. Its voice didn't come from its mouth. It echoed directly inside my mind. Mars will be our sanctuary when the king returns. We will re-establish our influence after the dust settles. I turned to Jesus, horrified. Are they talking about your return? He nodded. They know I am coming back. But instead of repenting, they are preparing to run. I wanted to scream. That's impossible. We at SpaceX, we believed we were doing the right thing. We wanted to help humanity. Jesus touched my shoulder again, and the peace returned. The hearts of many are sincere, Omar, but the enemy is cunning. He uses the noblest dreams of mankind to serve his own agenda. Before my eyes, the scene shifted. I saw thousands of blueprints, launch schedules, robotic systems, things I knew intimately, things I had worked on myself. But now I saw a hidden layer of intent behind them. These projects weren't just about space exploration. They were an escape route. They are not building a colony to save humanity, Jesus said. They are building it to preserve their own power and to hide from what they know is unavoidable judgment. I saw underground stations being constructed on Mars by robots that had been launched long before the public even knew. They weren't carrying seeds or oxygen generators. They were carrying control devices, psychic sensors, and something darker I could not name. This is no longer a space race, Jesus said. This is a spiritual war. I staggered back, stunned. My God, this is rebellion. He nodded sadly. The enemy knows his time is short. He is gathering the powerful, creating a refuge, not from war, but from the light. I saw myself in a SpaceX boardroom meeting years ago, passionately presenting a solution for fuel efficiency on the Mars journey. But behind the smiles of the executives were looks that I only now understood. They weren't just thinking about science. Was I deceived? I asked, my voice hoarse. And how many others are like me? Jesus answered with a sentence that shook me to my core. Most who work for the darkness have no idea they are working for the darkness. I saw other engineers, my friends, deep in their work, unaware that another hand was whispering ideas into their minds, ideas that seemed to come from out of the blue. The promise of progress is the perfect cover, Jesus continued. As long as mankind chases greatness without checking their own souls, they will always be easy to manipulate. I choked. For years, I had lived in that system, with total trust. So, Is there any hope? I whispered. Can anyone else see this if they haven't died like me? Jesus looked deep into my eyes. No blame, no contempt. I am waking them up, one by one. But for them to hear, they need someone who dares to speak. I understood. The Mars project wasn't salvation. It was the bunker of the fallen. And my mission was no longer to decode technology, but to expose the truth hidden within it. I want you to see this not with human eyes, Jesus said, and then he placed his hand on my forehead. A flash of light shot through my mind. It didn't hurt, but it felt like waking up from a lifelong dream. When I opened my spiritual eyes, I saw SpaceX, but not the way I usually saw it. Not the steel buildings, the launch pads, the engine models. I was looking at the place I used to work with spiritual sight, and everything changed. The entire Starbase complex was covered in a black mist, like a churning cloud invisible to the naked eye. Dark entities, shaped vaguely like sentient smoke, were perched on the roofs of buildings, on the antennas, on the control rooms, whispering constantly. I could hear those sounds, not with my ears, but as sudden thoughts in my mind. The whispers spoke of progress is everything, no need for spirituality, science will save humanity, Mars is a new beginning, free from outdated religion, keep going, faster, faster. I froze. Those ideas, I used to think they were my own, but now I knew they were being planted. Jesus spoke, his voice gentle but clear. The enemy doesn't need you to openly betray me, he just needs you to believe that I am no longer relevant. I saw engineering meetings where we fiercely debated solutions for atmospheric entry, propulsion, fuel costs, and behind every meeting, silent shadows stood watching. No one saw them, but they were there. One of the shadows flew close to a manager, a man who had rejected a safety protocol proposal, and whispered something. The man's expression changed, and I knew something not of the light was shaping his decision. Jesus raised his hand, and I saw deep beneath the ground, a massive tunnel was being built by robots, a tunnel none of us had ever seen on a blueprint. It wasn't in any internal report, but it was there, on Mars, he said. They have already begun the same thing. The image shifted. I saw Mars, red and barren, but it wasn't dead, not in the way I believed. In a deep canyon, autonomous. Robots were moving silently. They weren't carrying scientific instruments. They were building, block by block, conduit by conduit, an architecture that was not human, tunnels, living quarters, control rooms, all arranged in a kind of inverted spiritual geometry. I didn't fully understand, but Jesus whispered, "It is a sanctuary, but not from solar flares. It is a place for them to hide from me." I was aghast. They think flying away from Earth is enough to escape your presence? Jesus nodded, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. They believe so, but there is nowhere in this universe where I do not reign. I created every planet, Mars included, and the stars beyond. I saw a dense map of future launch plans, but the terrifying part was the red lines drawn to hidden coordinates on Mars, unpublicized. Private ships for high-level partners. I understood. This wasn't an exodus for environmental reasons. This was a spiritual retreat, Jesus continued. Mankind has always been tempted by knowledge, by power, but without me, those things become tools for the darkness. I looked back at myself, all those years at SpaceX, pouring my heart into engine designs, thinking I was doing the right thing, but now I could see the very things I helped create were paving a road for the enemy. A pain rose in my chest. My God, was I an accomplice to this? He did not blame me. Your heart was sincere, Omar, but the veil was put in place long ago. I am now lifting it, so that my chosen ones can see. I saw a small wave of light emanate from people who were praying. An engineer quietly whispering a prayer on his lunch break. A janitor listening to a Christian podcast while he worked. A group of elderly people praying from far away. That light, though small, made the darkness recoil. Light doesn't have to be loud to be effective. Jesus said, "It just has to be true and unafraid." I wept, not from pain, but because for the first time, I was truly seeing the truth that this war was not just physical. It was a war for the soul, and I had been in the middle of it, without a clue. As the light of the spiritual vision began to fade, I thought I had seen the ultimate truth. But then Jesus turned to me and said, in a voice as warm as the dawn, "You have not yet seen what is most important." He waved his hand gently, and before my eyes, the space shifted again. I saw the small living room of our apartment in Brownsville, the simple rug, a warm yellow lamp, and Layla, my wife, sitting on the prayer mat, kneeling, facing east. She was praying softly, steadily, her daily ritual, "Ya Allah." Her voice trembled in Arabic, "Protect my husband in that foreign land. Though I don't understand the work he does, you understand? Please place light in his mind. Please do not let the world swallow his soul." I went still, my heart caught in my throat. This was something I never knew. I had thought I was the strong one, the one with the grand mission, taking humanity to new planets, and Layla? I had seen her prayers as weakness, a relic from an old religious world I was moving past. But I was so wrong. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. I felt a current of love so profound no words could ever describe it. He said, "She does not need to understand the details of your work, but she knows what is most important. Your soul needs protecting, and her prayers, quiet, persistent, are what kept your heart from growing hard." I saw, above my own spirit, throughout my entire time at SpaceX, an invisible shield. It wasn't shiny or spectacular, but it was so solid, nothing could break through. Every morning, Layla prayed, a thin circle of light would form around me, keeping the darkest entities from getting too deep inside my mind. Jesus looked at me, his eyes full of tenderness. "You did not survive because you were strong enough. You survived because she did not give up." I collapsed to my knees, my whole being shaking. The tears came unstoppable, not of regret, but of a shattering revelation. I thought I was the one building the future. I sobbed. It turns out I was the one being saved. I saw Layla again, placing her hand on my pillow early in the morning, even on the days we had argued the night before. She still prayed. I saw her quietly listening to the Quran in the kitchen, whispering as she made breakfast, "Lord, place light in his heart and discernment in his mind." I had never thanked her. I had even once dismissed her as old-fashioned and quaint. Jesus didn't condemn me. He simply reminded me, men often misunderstand the power of a whisper to heaven, but heaven never misses a single one, especially those offered in loneliness. I looked back at myself, an engineer trained by science, confident in my intellect, my logic, my progress, and realized I was never the strong one. It was Layla, the woman with no engineering degree, who wrote no code, who sat in no important meetings, who was the true guardian, quietly, unseen, but recorded in heaven. Have you ever thought your prayers just vanish into thin air? Have you ever felt that God, or Allah, or heaven isn't listening? Believe me, every whisper in the darkness is recorded, and sometimes your silent prayer is saving someone from a darkness they don't even know exists. Mars, a planet already. Judge Jesus said nothing more. He just held out his hand, and I felt myself pulled into another realm of space, beyond any physical boundary I had ever known. Before my eyes, a familiar yet utterly alien planet appeared. Mars, but it wasn't the barren, red Mars from the NASA satellite photos. It wasn't a world of dust and rock. It was green. I saw vast oceans, lush forests, and white clouds drifting around snow-capped mountains. Mars was once a living world. Before Earth had life, Mars had its own glory, Jesus said, his voice low and sad. But they chose the path of pride. I saw cities of light arise, brilliant, with technology far beyond what humanity has today. I saw intelligent beings, not entirely human-like, but bearing the marks of organized, brilliant societies. They were not ignorant. They were not savage. They knew they were created. But they did not want to worship the one who created them. They turned their back on the light. They worshipped their own intellect. They built towers to the heavens, not to honor the Creator, but to replace Him. Jesus showed me the rituals they performed, science mixed with occultism, technology paired with dark magic. They allied themselves with fallen entities from other dimensions, and together they planned to break free from heaven's rule. They did not want to submit. They wanted to become gods. I trembled. Every image was a warning bell ringing in my heart. What happened to them? I whispered. Jesus turned to me, his eyes full of pain. I was patient. I sent messengers. I waited for repentance. But in the end, judgment was unavoidable. Before my eyes, a searing red light consumed the planet. It wasn't a nuclear bomb, not a cosmic accident. It was a holy wrath. The entire planet burned, its layers peeled back like dead skin, its oceans vaporized, its atmosphere blown into dust. All life vanished, leaving only what humanity sees today. Red dust, Jesus said. Mankind thinks it is only iron oxide, but no, it is the ash of a dead civilization, a permanent reminder that rebellion never leads to life. I looked at Mars, now the dead planet I knew, and a shiver went through my very soul. Will Earth become the same? Jesus didn't answer right away. He placed a hand on my chest, where my heart was racing. Not yet. But mankind is walking very close to the same path. I saw Earth from a distance, a beautiful planet, but fading under a haze of greed, pride, and deception. I saw billboards advertising eternal life solutions, interstellar migration, AI to replace the Creator. I saw the meetings Jesus had shown me, the council preparing their Mars journey not out of hope, but out of fear of their inevitable end. They are not trying to expand life, they are trying to avoid facing the one who gave them life. Jesus looked at me gravely. Mankind thinks it is progressing, but they are repeating the exact mistake of Mars. Knowledge cannot save the soul if it does not lead to repentance. I fell to my knees, not from fear, but because the truth was too heavy. So, is there any hope left? I asked. Jesus nodded. There is, as long as there are people like Layla, those who pray in secret, those who dare to speak the truth, even if they are called crazy, those who understand that hope is not in the stars, but in the one who made the stars. I bowed my head, my heart heavy, not with despair, but with the knowledge that the road ahead would not be easy. I looked up at Jesus, my eyes still wide from what I'd seen, a living planet, now just ash, a warning and a prophecy. I blurted out, almost unconsciously, "What do I do? How can I stop this?" Jesus didn't answer right away. He looked at me like a father watching his son who had just awakened from a dream. Then, in a quiet but authoritative voice, he replied, "Your job is not to stop it. It is to sound the alarm." I frowned. I wanted to do something, to act, to prevent it. But Jesus shook his head. "It is not your mission to stop the storm. It is to plant the warning flags for those who have ears to hear, not to change everyone, but to awaken the ones I am calling." As he finished speaking, the scene around me changed again. I was flying over thousands of places on Earth, seeing people I had never met, but who had been praying for me for a long time. I saw an old woman in Egypt, her hair white, kneeling in a dusty room, whispering in ancient Arabic, "Ya Rab, raise up your people from within the darkness of technology." I saw children in Palestine, in a ruined room, placing their hands on a globe and saying, "Lord, please protect the people who work with the machines in the sky." I saw a group of women in Texas, sitting around a kitchen table, reading the Bible, holding hands and praying for the engineers, the scientists, the young people who are being tempted by a false light. None of them knew my name. None of them had ever seen my face, but they were all praying for the chosen one, who would warn Jesus turned to me. You thought you were just an engineer, but before you were born, I placed you in the middle of this plan. Those prayers, they were the spiritual network that kept you alive, kept your heart soft, kept your eyes from being blinded by false glory. I bowed my head, my chest tight. I used to think everything I achieved was through my own talent, logic, and skill, but it turns out, I was held up by invisible whispers from all over the world. Jesus came closer, placing his hand on my forehead. Instantly, a current of light shot through my brain like electricity, not painful, but filled with understanding. I am giving you discernment, so you can see what others cannot, not to judge, but to warn, not to destroy, but to save those who are still listening. I felt layers of perception open up like doors. I could see the lie beneath the tech slogans. I could feel the darkness behind the announcements of scientific progress. I didn't need proof. I had discernment. Jesus said, "When you return, some will laugh at you, some will call you crazy, but some will recognize the truth in your voice because I have already prepared their hearts." I was speechless. I never thought I would become someone like this, a witness, a trumpet in the modern desert. I asked, trembling, "But what if I'm alone? What if no one believes me?" Jesus smiled, the smile of one who knows the end from the beginning. Noah was also alone when he started building the ark. I do not need a crowd. I need the willing, and you are willing. I bowed my head, not in fear, but because I understood the weight of this mission, not to stop the coming spiritual flood, but to build a lighthouse for those willing to see the light. The light around me began to change. No more painful visions or cosmic mysteries. Now, I was standing in a place no words can adequately describe. The space was filled with light but didn't glare. The air was fragrant but with no physical scent. A deep peace soaked into my very bones, so profound I forgot I had ever known anxiety. Jesus stood beside me, his gaze no longer stern as when he spoke of deception and darkness. Now, his look was as gentle as a father's, and as fiery as a king welcoming his son home. "Omar," he said, "this is the threshold of my Father's house. This place was prepared from the beginning for those who love me." I looked around, no castles, no golden gates, but I knew with certainty that if I took one more step, I would never suffer again. No more pressure, no more struggle, no more loneliness. Jesus looked at me, his voice as soft as the wind but full of power. "You could stay, but I know your heart wants to go back." In an instant, an image of Layla appeared before me, sitting alone in our living room, her hands clutching her prayer shawl, her eyes wet with tears. She didn't know I was dead, but she was feeling something in her spirit. I saw my colleagues, young engineers full of dreams, still working in the cold light of the lab, completely unaware they were just tools in a plan darker than anything they could imagine. I turned to Jesus, my heart as heavy as lead, but also burning like a fire. "I will go," I said, "but please, please don't leave me." Jesus came closer, placing his hand on my heart. "Omar, every time they call you crazy, I will whisper the truth into your heart. Every time you are mocked, I will place my peace in your soul. And every time you doubt yourself, I will remind you of this moment where you stood before glory, but chose to return for love." Tears started to fall, not of fear, but of overwhelming emotion. I could have stayed, but my heart wouldn't let me. Jesus continued, "Your mission will not be easy. You will be misunderstood, rejected, isolated, but you will never be abandoned." I nodded. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to obey in the midst of a storm. The light began to change. Everything around me faded, as if I were being pulled back to the physical world. I heard the voice of Jesus one last time in that light. "They can run to Mars, they can fly to the edge of the universe, but they cannot run from me. And now, I am sending you, not to condemn, but to warn, not to punish, but to remind them that grace is still available. If you have ever stood at the threshold of giving up, of quitting, of retreating, know that the choice to return for love, however painful, is the mark of a called soul. You are not alone. The first sound I heard when I opened my eyes was a heart monitor. The second was the sound of Layla sobbing. My vision was blurry, my throat raw and burned. I tried to move, but my body felt like stone. A nurse yelled, "He's awake. Call the doctor." Layla leaned close, her hands trembling, but holding mine tightly, her tears falling without stop. "Omar, Ya Allah, you really came back." I looked into her eyes and realized instantly I was back. But I was not the same man. 17 minutes, that's how long my heart had stopped. The doctors said I shouldn't have woken up. Or if I did, I shouldn't be lucid, shouldn't be able to speak, shouldn't remember my own wife's name. But I remembered everything, every image, every word Jesus spoke, every emotion, still burning in my bones. I wasn't just alive, I was resurrected, with a new consciousness. I said nothing for the first 3 days. Doctors came and went, baffled by the test results. No brain damage, no hemorrhaging, no lung damage despite the lack of breath. I was just silent. But Layla knew. She didn't ask questions. She just sat there, holding my hand, as if her touch was enough. On the third night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I whispered, "I have to tell you something, but I'm not sure you'll believe me." She nodded, her expression strangely calm. I told her everything, from the explosion, to the light, to meeting Jesus. I told her about the council, the Mars plan, the entities manipulating humanity, and about the call. I thought she would be shocked, horrified, skeptical, but Layla just listened silently, her face never leaving mine. When I finished, she squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. "I have been praying for this for 2 years. I have been asking Allah to show you what was really happening in that place." And I knew, I felt, the prayer had been received. I broke down and cried, not from emotion, but because for the first time in my life, I knew with certainty I had been heard, not just by God, but by the woman I love. When I left the hospital, the doctors still had no explanation. They sent my test results to larger research facilities. They called me a medical phenomenon. Me. I just knew I no longer belonged to the old world. I couldn't go back to being an engineer, not like before. I couldn't pretend I didn't know what was really happening behind those steel doors. I had seen the truth, and the truth would no longer leave me alone. I left SpaceX on a rainy morning in Brownsville. No farewell party, no celebration, just a short letter to HR. I can no longer continue building a Noah's Ark for the fallen. No one understood what I meant, but I didn't need them to, not yet. In the weeks after I quit, a few old colleagues reached out, not to blame me, but to ask questions. "Are you okay? Why would you leave when things are moving so fast?" I had a weird dream. Something feels wrong at the test site. One of them, a guy named Kareem, who worked on my old refueling systems team, whispered to me. I saw a black shadow standing next to the control booth in my dream. It didn't speak, but I could feel it, directing things. I didn't need to ask more. I knew they were beginning to sense it too, not with their eyes, but with their spirit. I didn't become a preacher or write a book right away. I did the simplest thing. Layla and I joined a small prayer group. It was a group of a few older couples, a math teacher, and a young man from Honduras. We weren't against science. We just believed that spirituality wasn't obsolete, that the real war isn't about technology, it's about truth. We prayed for the scientists with sincere hearts. We prayed for those being deceived without their knowledge. We prayed for the plan of heaven to expose the plan in the shadows. Every night, after Layla was asleep, I would sit at my laptop. I documented everything I saw, every image, every word from Jesus, every cosmic scene, every line from the Council of Darkness, not for show, not to prove anything, just to prepare. because I know the day is coming when I will have to stand up and tell it all to those who are ready to listen. Sometimes I feel alone, sometimes I doubt my own memory, but every time I do, I remember his words. Every time they call you crazy, I will whisper the truth into your heart, and I feel at peace, not because I am strong, but because I died, and I know exactly why I was brought back to life. The world keeps spinning. Mars is still the symbol of humanity's great hope. The rockets still launch. The articles still call it the grand journey of the future. But I know what they don't know, or don't want to know. They are not running to Mars to explore. They are running to hide. If you are reading this and you think I'm crazy, I don't blame you. I used to think like you. I used to believe that only science could save the world. I used to think progress was a one-way street toward the light. But then I died, and I saw that behind the false light is a spreading darkness. Stop dreaming of escaping Earth. Start dreaming of being rescued from the darkness. The countdown is not to Mars. It's to the return of the King.